Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you today, and we are going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2 from 1965 today. Um, so I wanted to take a few minutes to just explain to anybody who is new here to the channel or maybe is newer to comic books a couple of things. One, what is an annual? Comic books, we typically the publishing schedule for American comic books, we typically say it's once a month. They are monthly. Sometimes they are every other month. Sometimes they are twice a month. But realistically, your comics come out pretty much once a month. However, that's not entirely true. They really come out every 4 weeks. And if you look at a calendar, that doesn't add up to 52. So what I mean by that is if you have every 4 weeks a new comic book comes out, and there are 12 months of the year, every 4 weeks times 12 months equals 48 weeks, but there's 52 weeks in the year. So we're missing an extra week. So basically, because of the calendar, there's an extra week in every year where publishers have to account for something that isn't part of the regular run. Now, again, if you're a casual comic book fan, you might just be saying, well, why don't they just put out 13 comics a month or 13 comics a year? What's the difference? Some of it is tradition. Some of it is that 12 is a nice round number. And so you can tell your years by issues, 12, 24, 48, et cetera, 36, 48, et cetera, et cetera. The other part is that the annual would do a couple of things. It could give you an opportunity to step away from the ongoing storyline in your comic and focus on something different, maybe go in a different direction. You could use it as a test ground to try new characters. So you could introduce maybe a new hero or a new villain. And then sometimes you can also give your regular artist a month off, or not really a month off. It gives them an opportunity maybe to catch up with their deadlines, kind of stockpile some pages for the upcoming year, and kind of gets ahead of the publishing cycle game. So there's a lot of reasons why you would do it as an annual, as a different kind of comic. And as well, then, because it is different, typically the publishers give you a larger or different format. So in the one we're going to be looking at today, it is referred to as a king-sized annual of 72 pages, where your normal comic is somewhere between 20 to 22 pages. So that part is great, and it, again, just gives you something different to look at. So just an example to explain to anybody who's not familiar with the process what a comic book annual is and why you would do it. The other thing I need to explain to you with this, we'll get into it with the comic. I'll show you when we go to the comic. Let me take a moment to just, of course, thank everybody who is a member here, or I say a member, a subscriber to the channel. Thank you so much for following me here on YouTube and enjoying this series where we look at the art of Spider-Man. If you're new to the channel, make sure you check out the playlist. We have issues going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. I also have a lot of other videos that deal with my own artwork, tips and tricks. I did a video all about different white media that you would use to kind of either correct your inking mistakes, or if you want to do special effects with your inking mistakes, or inking. So I went through all the different ones that I've tried to see which one was the best. I've talked about how to take a comic book script and turn it into the layouts of pages. All those kinds of things are here on my YouTube channel. So if you're an artist, check those out as well. And again, thank you so much. So that being said, let's cut over to the comic and I'll explain to you what we're going to be looking at today a little more. Okay, so here is the Amazing Spider-Man annual number 2 from 1965. And as you can see, it says 72 big pages, which is great. However, you also know at the bottom here, it says 3 of Spidey's earliest, greatest, most requested full-length epics. So what's happened is, with this book, they've done one new story, which is a more traditional 20-ish page story. And then they've done reprints of early stories in here. This version that I have is a digital version. So, again, if you are familiar with the channel and this series, I look at these comics through what are called PDF files. So in 2004, Marvel scanned every copy of Amazing Spider-Man up to 2004 and put it onto a computer format, which is called PDF. Probably familiar with that. And then put it on CD-ROMs and sold the set as a set of CD-ROMs so you could digitally read the comics. And that's what I have. For some reason, though, they did not include the annuals. They're not part of that CD-ROM series. So I have had to go and find these digitally online. And when you do that, they are not the originals. So the ones that we see normally are scanned copies. So they are aged. It is the actual comic book. It is the original ads, the original colors, the original lettering, dialogue, everything. This is a, for lack of a better term, let's call it a remastered version. This has been computer colored or recolored. I don't know if there are edits to any of the dialogue or any of the lettering. I don't have a copy of this to compare, but the reality here is that this is not exactly original. And I say that because this copy, this digital copy, does not have the 3 reprinted stories in it. So we are not going to be looking through 72 pages today. We are going to be looking at a more condensed new story. There are some pinups that I believe we've seen before, and then that's it. So, again, just to be clear, this is not a copy of the original 72-page comic, and so we won't be looking at the entire thing. But since it's reprints, we've already covered them. I don't know what 3 stories they are, but obviously we've covered them here in this series because we've covered the entire Amazing Spider-Man series. So here's the cover, and I said it's an okay cover. It's an interesting choice, I thought, of the highlights here on the full figure. So you notice that there's a very hard line here that goes up this side. So it's the figure is clearly being, I guess, lit from, it's weird. It almost looks like it's, I would say maybe double lit. What double lit means is, so this side of Spidey is in light. You can see that because there's a shadow underneath this arm. So the light has to be coming from the right, where things like the point of his elbow might create a little shadow here. The shadows are on the inside of this leg, so this must be the light source. However, that would mean this would normally be pretty dark. But the reason that you have, if you notice along this edge that Steve Ditko's created, there's no webbing pattern on the boots. There's no webbing pattern on the glove at all, on the shoulders, and on that side of the mask, which normally is a sign of, the way it's drawn is be a super bright light source on that side. But that's not the case. So I don't know if that's whether the effect that he was going for was, again, what we call double light. So there would be a light source on this side, sometimes referred to as a rim light, because it's just on the edge of the character, and the other main light source is coming from this way. It's just an interesting choice to do on a cover when Spidey is all alone. There's no background. There's no reference to any other light source. There's no other shadows to direct where the light would be coming from. So again, just kind of an interesting choice to make. Then you have this sort of montage-y kind of image with his head, and then different Spideys crawling around the head. Again, it works. It's pretty neat as far as just it being a Spidey image. Doesn't tell us anything about the story. That's okay. Kind of makes me wonder if maybe this piece of art was, well, I would have said it was done for something else and then used here, except for the fact that you have this figure here swinging over some of the text, right? He's clearly, kind of grabbed. Same here. Spidey's vaulting over the S in plus. Now, it could be that those figures were there and somebody who's really, really good added this at the right area, kind of, put it together. Obviously, that would be a lot easier to do in today's world with computers, but maybe. Just kind of an interesting cover. Of course, again, it's this is computer colored. So you see this little bit of fade from sort of a darker red to the main red of Spidey. It's supposed to be providing some shadow. I don't know if that works that great. The yellow is super, super bright. These are the original color choices. The original cover does feature a yellow background, which I think works really well with Spidey to have it pop off. You have all three of your primary colors. Your primary colors are obviously being red, blue, and yellow. And when you mix those, you can make every other color in the rainbow. So good use of the primary colors to make it bold and bright. And this is definitely going to pop off of the newsstand for a reader. So we'll jump in here and we'll talk about this comic. So we start with a splash page, and we can see that this story is going to feature Doctor Strange very, very heavily. So just some background. At this time, Steve Ditko, our regular artist, and so far the only artist that we've seen on Spider-Man, is also drawing the Doctor Strange monthly comic book. So he plotted the story. And here it mentions that that Steve Ditko, being the one who created the plot, was really the driving force between putting Doctor Strange and Spider-Man together. Very possible. I myself am not a big Doctor Strange fan. I don't own any Doctor Strange comics unless he appears as a guest character in somebody else's comic. I don't own any standalone Doctor Strange comics. It's kind of not my gig. And I think it's always had a history of sort of up and down readership. Not the most popular character ever. And so maybe this was an opportunity to put Doctor Strange, which was a book I believe that Steve Ditko really was pretty passionate about. It really fit to his style and the way he drew his creativity. But if it wasn't getting the readership, let's put the two together with Spider-Man, who's arguably one of, if not the most popular comic at the time. Probably Fantastic Four #1, Spider-Man #2, if I had to guess. So anyway, we have this picture here that's kind of giving you an example of what's going to happen. We've got these weird, kind of crazy, psychedelic, for lack of a better term, backgrounds that are Steve's way of depicting magic and sort of other realms and other dimensions. And then you have these figures that are involved. So we have our bad guy, we have Doctor Strange, and Spidey kind of stuck in the middle. And it really does sum up kind of the plot of the issue. One of the things I did know, and I don't know if this is because of the reprint quality of this and that it has been recolored on computers, I found that the inks are very thick. So what I mean by that is if you look up here at Spidey, these very solid, super real heavy black inks, look at the cape, very, very heavy, just real thick lines. There's no feathering, there's no hatching, there's nothing that we're used to with Steve Ditko's inks. Normally he's a much lighter inker, in my opinion. And we can go back, you go back and look at any of my old episodes here, and you can kind of see the difference. Now, so again, I don't know if that's because they had to take some sort of an original, which I doubt very much the original black and white existed, and then they had to take like probably the original scans of the pages, doctor them digitally to then recolor them. So I'm going to say it's the inks throughout this book are much thicker and chunkier and kind of, I don't mean to be rude, but I'll say clumsy compared to Steve Ditko's normal inks. And I think it's a factor of the digital reprinting. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. The last thing I'll say about this splash page here is I thought the figures were very small. It's very hard to make out any of the details of the villain. Doctor Strange himself is very, very small in the background. You could, especially with Spidey, because all you have to do is have him crouching down, maybe sticking to the side of whatever this globe is, move it up a little bit, and then you have a lot more room for both figures. I would have liked to have seen that. But that's just me. So here is our splash page. And now we open with the story. Nice vertical panel to start off with. I really like the tall vertical panels, especially when you have characters like Spider-Man or Daredevil. Characters that are kind of rooftop based and especially because Spidey can scale those walls up and down, it adds a very nice height element to the page that emphasizes that we are in New York City, and that the whole thing isn't sort of just this tall. It's a very tall city with a lot of tall buildings, and that is what works to Spider-Man's strengths with his powers and such. So I really like that there. This is an example of the digital recoloring where you can see they're trying to show that there's light coming from the street up to Spidey. And so they're trying to make the areas of his costume that are closer to the light source pink, thinking that pink is light red. And technically, yes, it is. Pink is light red. It's red with white added to it. But it doesn't really work for how red actually works. So when you have reds and you in real life, and you have, unless they're under a incredibly bright like fluorescent light, or maybe like a halogen type light or something, maybe really bright LEDs. If you have natural lights, or what's even better here, yellow electric lights from a city that always have sort of a yellowish glow, your darker reds are going to be darker. And you can add some black to red to make it darker and have darker tones. These tones are going to move towards the orange phase. So your light red really isn't so much pink as it is orange. And if they had used that technique, it would have looked much more realistic and much more natural. Let's see here. Just in general, talk about characters. Again, you can kind of see, like I said here, even in this close-up, the inks are so much, in my opinion, just thicker, chunkier. We would have seen a lot more detail and it would have been much clearer in the original comic, is my guess. Steve's inks are very, very nice. Somebody who has a real aptitude for thin lines to illustrate stuff. And here you just have very thick, chunky blobs that kind of form faces and stuff like that. Like this guy right here, really, really heavy line work. I did like the characters though, and Steve is very, very good. Steve Ditko is very, very good at creating unique characters that stand out from one another. They're not the same. And these guys are supposed to be super tough, big, strong guys. They wipe out this whole bar of other tough guys. And they're tough because this guy has a cauliflower ear, which is, again, a really nice touch. And this guy's nose is so broad, you can tell it's been broken a million times. And I just thought that was a really nice touch to have these tough characters have not just big muscles, but facial features that help also tell you that, they're used to fighting, punching, getting punched, stuff like that. Okay, let's see here. So in this page over here, so the bad guy mesmerizes these two tough guys and basically makes them unstoppable. Not zombies, but they're almost like zombies, right? He's controlling them completely, and they feel no pain. They can't be stopped. And so he sends them to steal an artifact from Doctor Strange that's going to make him the most powerful sorcerer on Earth. Now, what I said in my notes here is hands. Hands are both ubiquitous, and something that we all are immediately familiar with is the human hand. And when it's not drawn correctly, we all know it immediately. It's very hard to draw because of all the joints and all of the angles and things you can do with hands makes it a difficult thing to draw and draw correctly. But here, Steve Ditko has done a great job. And throughout this comic, this is about hands. There is a lot of stuff here about really good hands, again, to take note of as an artist. There's a close-up here of this guy holding half of this wand, and he's trying to get the other half. And the hand is delicate. He's holding it with just the fingertips. You have the angles. The knuckles are drawn very, very well. That is an interesting hand. He could have drawn it like this, where he's clutching it in a fist, which is a lot easier to draw, but he did it with a very delicate touch. Same thing here. Doctor Strange is startled by these intruders, and his hand splays out. Then he's going to cast some spells. And his hands, again, move in a unique way as he's casting his magic spells. Hard to do, but important. And when you do it well, really can set you apart as an artist from others. So young artists, take note of all the hands here. Here's another hand here. Even though this is one of the thicker hands, right, from one of these guys, still done well as a hand reaching out to grab something. Let's see. Good, I mentioned over here, good punches, good fighting flow. Again, it's a little weird, and I think it's just the reprint value makes the figures and the line work look so odd to me. But nice punches, good fight choreography. This is really nice. Spidey kind of twisting and turning as these guys are lumbering after him. I thought that part was pretty good. I did like this. We didn't see this a lot. This is, I don't know if we've seen this anywhere. Spidey breaking the panel. Pretty cool. It shows you how strong the punch is. It shows you that it's so powerful, and that he's breaking the wall of the media itself, and really emphasizes that action. Also puts it much closer to us compared to the next panel, where the camera is pulled out a little bit. So that's a really cool touch there. I like that. Something to use, but use sparingly. Again, more good fighting, interesting choreography. We got our Spider Tracer. So the bad guys, because of the spells, Spidey, as much as he hits them, he can't stop them. They're strong enough to break his webbing because, again, they're powered by magic. And so they beat him up. He's not done, but he needs a break. And so he throws a Spider Tracer so he can follow them and keep track of them. They return to the bad guy. I think what's his name here? Xandu? Yeah, Xandu. And now we've got some interesting stuff. So I mentioned here in my notes, overall, and this goes for really from here through the rest of the story, crazy backgrounds, crazy weird perspectives, weird crazy designs, this shapes and things that don't make sense, that come from just an imagination and Steve Ditko's mind. And I really appreciate that. When you go back and look at old Marvel comics, the person that most everybody talks about and looks at is Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby, for as what he was great at in his own way, was like the amazing technology, making up, characters like Galactus or all the Fantastic Four, their gizmos and gadgets and all that stuff. Jack Kirby had a way of coming up with things that were mechanical-ish, but also future-ish and didn't really exist. Steve Ditko, I think, had his own strength, which was this sort of organic, in this case it's being used to portray magic, but I mean, it could be anything. And all these shapes, the planets, the swirls, the portals, all that stuff, again, is something that Steve Ditko brought to the table that other artists, have copied since, but definitely he brought it in a way that other artists didn't at the time. So Spidey's he's recovered, and he has followed the bad guys using his the Spider Tracer, and now he's going to fight Xandu, and Xandu's going to just teleport him somewhere else. So Spidey webs the wand, and next thing you know, Swoop takes it with him, and now he is in a weird sort of in-between world, navigating between dimensions, and the laws of physics don't apply, and everything is crazy and wild and weird. This is awesome. I love the big panel here to show that crazy landscape of planets and twists and twirls and all sorts of stuff, doorways, and again, something that straight out of Steve Ditko's brain is just awesome. Quick note as well. See what I was talking about? This is what I was talking about on the cover and what you call double lighting. And it's emphasized better. It's more clear here because of the coloring. So on one side, Spidey is being lit kind of from the front. The front of his mask is lit. The front of his chest is lit. The top of the leg, the front of the leg and boots, etc. So that means the back would be shadowed, which is what we've got. The shadows align on the opposite side of the light. It makes sense. However, there is orange being cast on that side, which means there's another light source from the left shining that's maybe not as bright as this main light source, but this is what is referred to as double lighting and can be a very cool dramatic effect when you use it. But again, then you have to be consistent with it, and everything around has to be double lit. So if Spidey is here and you can see the shadow on this ball that he's standing on, the light is coming from this way, so he's casting a shadow behind it. You also need that edge light around the edge of the ball because there's another light source coming from the other side. And that continues especially if you're doing it in a more traditional background, realistic background. Double lighting everything can be a lot of work. So one more thing here we're going to see, and we've seen it quite a bit in these panels here, or these pages. I'm going to back up a little bit. Tons of the grid. And it's been a while since I've really talked about the grid. And the grid is when you have a bunch of panels all in a row that are all the same size or very close to the same size. Usually there are going to be 4 panels, 6 panels, sometimes even as much as 9 panels. There's lots of grid work in this book. And one of the things that the grid layout does is it keeps it simple. So as a reader, it's very easy. We know exactly what order to read the panels in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Easy peasy. When you start using more creative panel design, sometimes the eye flow can get lost unless you're able to use the art within the panel to direct the eye. And that's a whole different skill set. Here we are, again, just very simple, but it also means the pace is faster. When you have the grid like this, every moment is equally important, and they are happening in a very strict sequence of moment to moment to moment to moment. When you have something like this where the panels change significantly, that's a way of changing your scene, sort of changing the moment. And so we have this action of the guy dives for the wand. Now he's got to get his flunkies to go after it. And now we pause for a minute and go, okay, now something else is happening at a different time. And that's Spidey here in this crazy landscape. Now we move through, and as he's fighting the 2 flunkies again, it's all happening in a rapid pace moment after moment. So that's a reason why you would use a grid panel, a grid page. It's, again, not the most interesting from a visual composition perspective, but certainly has its functionality. And that's what we're doing here is we're picking up the pace of the action. Doctor Strange is getting involved. Spidey is fighting these guys who seem to be unstoppable in another world. And so things are going to move quickly. I did note here, I like this a lot as Doctor Strange comes out of the shadows into confront Xandu, this other wizard. I like this shadow on the top. I would have liked to seen a little more shadow maybe on the bottom of the cape as well to really show that he was coming out of a more shadowed area. But I thought that was definitely good lighting and a nice touch there before we get to big kind of bright magic explosions and stuff like that. Let's see here. Again, more panel stuff, grids where it's just sort of action. Xandu, the Spidey and the thugs get back. Xandu takes the wand from him, and now he is potentially more powerful than Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange has to get up to some tricks. And he gets Spidey. So they free the two guys from the spell. And now it's Doctor Strange and Spidey can go stop Xandu. Again, nice big panel here. Nice flip away. So you got a lot of action. Spidey's shooting a web. This guy's shooting black lightning at people. Doctor Strange is casting a spell of a shield. Spidey's jumping and flipping. Good use of a nice wide horizontal page or panel. That's a good opportunity to spread out the action so that people can see things. Because otherwise, up to this point, everything has been very tight. Our view has been very tight and close. We're in right next to the figures. This really pulls back and lets us see the environment and where everything's happening. So again, it's just too much between Doctor Strange and Spidey. This guy just can't keep up with both of them. Spidey gets a drop with his webbing. Doctor Strange gets the this magic thing back and drains its power, and then takes care of Xandu. And there we go. And then the two heroes part ways. I thought that the last panel, I thought this was a really neat idea. This is a good idea to have the two heroes separating where, Doctor Strange is flying off, Spidey left standing on the building in a very heroic stance. The only thing I said was, I didn't think that this was the best angle that you could have done for this. One, we don't see Doctor Strange. Like, his figure, he could have been turned so that he's looking back, maybe waving to Spidey, maybe just so that we know that he's, talking to him. Likewise, the whole thing could have been bigger. There's a lot of this negative space. And we've talked about this in some more recent episodes, positive and negative space. So when you draw the outline of the building, the shape inside this building is a positive space. And the shape inside of the lines that form Spidey is a positive space. And the area around him and around Doctor Strange is negative space. Great. And it's important to make sure you have that for your word balloons. You want your dialogue to be able to fit into areas and not cover up all the artwork. But as you can see, he was able to put, the letterer was able to put the word balloons up at the top, and there's all this space. And why do we need all this space? So what if you turn the angle where Spidey was more in the foreground, maybe a little bit bigger, but you could still see all or most of his body, and then Doctor Strange flying away from him in more of a perspective where he's going away, filling up the page. To me, that would have been maybe a more dramatic and more interesting angle. I do really like this, a slight upshot of Spidey looking heroic on the ledge, but I thought that the Doctor Strange figure, and again, too much negative space kind of leaves something. I feel like I'm missing something, just as a viewer. So, and that's the end of the story. That's really all there is to it. And then we have pinups, and I believe, again, we've seen these before. We've certainly seen the Circus of Crime in these two issues, in 16 and 22, but I think we've seen this pinup before. Here's the Scorpion. I know we've seen this pinup of the Beetle before, possibly in the last annual. The interesting, it's still called Jonah's Robot instead of a Spider Slayer. Eventually, all the robots that are created by the scientists that created this one are called Spider Slayers. And then the Crime Master, and again, we've seen this pinup before as well. And then that's it. And then it goes back to the next issue, which we looked at recently. So that's the end of the book. Like I said, it doesn't include the reprinted stories. This is just because of the digital format, it just gave us the new story that was featured in the annual. So there we go. So let's kick back to the desk and we'll wrap this up. All right, so that was the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2 from 1965. At least it was kind of the annual. We didn't get to see the whole thing, but as I keep saying, we have already, I don't know what the 3 previous reprinted issues were, but obviously we have covered them here in this series. So it's one of the ones we've already looked at, or 3 of them that we've already looked at. This featured a lot of very interesting things. As I mentioned, if you're an artist and you're studying, great hands, great use of dynamic hands in this. Definitely something to study if you're struggling how to draw hands or draw them in interesting ways. There are some really neat, imaginative backgrounds everywhere from the layers of Doctor Strange and Xandu, the evil wizard, to the other dimensions that Spidey gets sent to. Again, really neat stuff to study and kind of look at, and very creative. On the downside, I'm not a Doctor Strange fan, so the story in and of itself didn't do a lot. The idea of an evil wizard stealing a magical device and then end up getting beaten by Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, it's okay. I thought, again, because of the reprinting factor, I thought a lot of the inks were overdone, very heavy, very chunky, not the usual kind of light touch and detailed inking that I'm used to from Steve Ditko. And so I think that kind of took away some of my enjoyment of the story. So for me, if I'm going to rank this out of 10, I would give this a 5 out of 10. For me personally, if I didn't read this, it doesn't impact the ongoing storyline. It doesn't impact the canon of Spider-Man. So if I missed this annual, I'd be okay, right? I'd just keep going on to the next issue of Spidey and everything would be fine. So again, that's me, but that's okay because we're going to move on next week to the next issue and get to look at the regular run of Amazing Spider-Man again and catch up with Peter and the gang and see what's going on. And I hope you join me with that. So every Monday at 8 a.m. we launch a new video. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Make sure you hit the notification button so you'll see anything that comes out new, not just the Spider-Man videos, but also art videos, art videos, training videos, teaching videos, etc. All the things that we do here on the channel. So enjoy. Thank you for your time today. I hope you had a good time. I did too. And we'll see you next week for more Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks.